Hello and welcome to the Fifth Down Huddle. Thank you so much for tuning in, and before we get started today, I'm going to ask that you check out the Instagram, the Twitter page, the Spotify page at Fifth Down Huddle. On Spotify and YouTube, we post the full weekly podcast covering the latest NFL news and my best NFL predictions. Along with that, on Wednesdays, we're going to start doing fantasy episodes in which I cover who you should draft on your fantasy team and why. This being one of those smaller episodes here, so kind of going to be going back and forth between that. But yeah, the most recent podcast just dropped yesterday on Saturday, so go check that out as soon as you can. But let's huddle up. So this is the first part of a series I will do for the foreseeable future. This is due to the fact that I love fantasy football and I'm pretty damn good at it. So let's get into the topic for today's video, that being Tom Brady. He's arguably the best quarterback of all time, but arguably not the best fantasy quarterback of all time. This year, though, Tom Brady will make a run for the top fantasy quarterback in the league, or at least top 5. I can almost guarantee he's going to be top 5. And the biggest reason for that is the improvement in terms of weapons. Brady has been a top 15 fantasy quarterback for the majority of his year, including last season where he was the 12th best. And that includes his last 6 seasons being top 15. So right off the bat, you can see why I have him as a good prospect for this year's draft. He hasn't deteriorated with age in terms of fantasy production. So Tom Brady is headed to a brand new team, one that I believe will incredibly burst open the door for Brady to have career high stats. Considering Brady was top 15 last year with a revolving door at wide receiver, I think it's very probable that he will make a run for top 5 with the best receiving core of his career. I truly believe this is the best receiving core of his career. You're talking about Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski. Now, a lot of people will say, Rob Gronkowski, he hasn't played in a year. He was injured beforehand. He only had a 3-touchdown under 700-yard season in his last year with Brady. How good is Gronk? Well, I think the biggest part you can take away from it is that Gronk is going to be at 100% health. Something he really hasn't been at since his best year of his career. So considering that, if you're looking at it, you got to think to yourself, okay, Gronk is at full health. When's the last time we saw him at full health? We really haven't for a long, long time. And it's the biggest reason why he retired. He told us all the reason he retired was not because he didn't enjoy football anymore. It was because of the injuries. He didn't enjoy the injuries. He still loves the game. That's why he's coming back. He wants to play with Tom Brady, the quarterback he started his career with, and the quarterback he wants to finish it with. So, like I said, Rob Gronkowski's at 100% health. And then you got 2 other solid tight ends, O.J. Howard, who's never really been used well by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But considering they have Gronk now, I very much doubt that they don't use this to their advantage. You're talking about 3 solid tight ends that could all be starters in the NFL. You're going to see a lot of 3 tight end sets or 2 tight end, 2 receiver sets. You're going to see a lot of those. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to abuse it. 3 big tight ends that also opens up the run game. But another thing that helps Brady's case is that if Winston could throw for 5,000 yards in that system, you don't think Brady can? Brady's arguably the best quarterback in NFL history. Now, granted, he's not where he used to be. But Jameis Winston, I think we can all agree, is nowhere near how good Tom Brady is. Now, granted, Jameis Winston threw up a lot of 50-50 balls, and that's a big reason why he had so many yards, but you're telling me Brady can't at least throw 4,000? I mean, come on. Especially when you consider that Rob Gronkowski was added, and Brady has practically been given control of the offense by Bruce Arians. We saw that recently. He's been working out with the receivers. The Cardinals, there were reports from within the front office that Bruce Arians basically said, all right, Brady, you know how to run an offense. You've ran a successful offense for 20 years. I'm going to give you a lot of control. And I believe Brady and that offensive coordinator, was playing in the NFL when Brady was coming up to stardom. In fact, Brady even beat the Tampa Bay current offensive coordinator 28-3 in a playoff game over a decade ago. So they have both long histories in the NFL. And I think that's a great thing. That's a great chemistry there because they can both talk with a lot of football knowledge and a lot of NFL knowledge, which is important to have that type of chemistry between a quarterback and an offensive coordinator. And it helps even more which is why it will help in this situation that they will both be similar in terms of how much experience they have, which helps them to be on the same page. It's a lot harder to find a chemistry between a coach and a quarterback when you have a rookie quarterback tied up with a veteran coach, or a rookie coach tied up with a veteran quarterback. So the fact that they're both veterans, I think, is really, really going to aid that offense. Now, the best part of this is that nobody is expecting Brady to be great. People seem to be leaving out the fact that Brady was top 15 with a terrible offense last year and is now going to be playing with an entirely new offense. Look at his offense last year. N'Keal Harry, the rookie wide receiver, first-round talent, they drafted him to try and fix the fact that they had a terrible receiving core, and he was injured for the majority of the season. And when he came back, people say, yeah, he wasn't that good. He really wasn't. He didn't do much more than anything. He didn't do much more than nothing. Mohamed Sanu was brought in mid-season, had to learn an offense on the fly, was running wrong routes, was making mistakes because he's learning arguably the most complicated offense in the NFL in the middle of the season. Then you go to Julian Edelman, who was really the only receiver on the Patriots roster that stayed steadily good all season, and he's a slot receiver, under 6 foot, not very fast, just a really good slot route runner. So he's playing with this entirely new offense. He goes from having no outside threat to having pretty much two. Chris Godwin can run great deep routes, and Chris Godwin can also run great slot routes. You're also looking at Mike Evans, who's arguably one of the top deep threats in the league. You're looking at Rob Gronkowski, who can really do it all because of how physically able he is. He's not a great route runner, but he has great hands, and he has great blocking. You're looking at O.J. Howard, who hasn't really been much of a vertical threat for the Buccaneers as of recent, but I believe he can be. We've seen Brady work with top-tier tight ends, and we've seen what he does with them. I believe he can bring O.J. Howard to the next level, and then you have Cameron Brate. I mean, just think about it for a second. You have a pretty solid O-line with the Buccaneers, a decent running back, granted, not a top 15 running back, but a decent running back, and then you have 3 tight ends who are all really solid blockers. That could make up for a great run game, and you tie that with the passing ability, it's going to be a nightmare for defenses on the other side of the field. Now, granted, Brady doesn't have Belichick anymore. That's a big thing. But almost I'm willing to say that the fact that Brady doesn't have Belichick is going to aid his fantasy performance. You look at Belichick, Belichick doesn't care about your stats. Belichick doesn't build an offense around one player, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Belichick builds an offense around every single player working together, like a clock. But what Bruce Arians is trying to do, what the Buccaneers are trying to do, which is why they put up a $60 million contract on I think it was a 42-year-old quarterback or 43. I don't even know at this point. I've lost count. But an old man at quarterback, they just put up $60 million, and the reason for that is because they are going to build this year's team around Brady, which they have. Rob Gronkowski, a great O-lineman in the first round. They have built a team around Brady, and I'm guessing they're going to try and reshape that offense around Brady as well. So Brady, for the last 20 years, has not had an offense centered around him. Belichick always centered the offense around what their strengths were outside of Brady. Granted, including Brady, that's why you didn't see him running read options. But my point is that the Buccaneers are counting on Brady to be the reason for their success. Belichick was counting on the team to be the reason for their success, meaning every part needed to do just their job. But the Buccaneers are hoping that Brady can do a lot better than just his job and can really shine to get them to a Super Bowl. So here, now up next, I'm going to do my projections for Brady this upcoming fantasy season. I'm going to go through each game and give you his stat line, and then at the end, I'll tell you his totals in terms of quarterback ranking, passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions. So, week 1, Bucks at the Saints. So they're going to have to go down to Louisiana. I believe Brady goes 22 for 31, 312 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I believe he has a great start to the season. I mean, he's going out there to prove all the haters wrong. I hate to use the word haters because that makes me sound like a hardcore fan. But what I'm trying to say is Brady has another chip on his shoulder. People are doubting him. They're saying, you're nothing without Belichick. He's going to go out there and he's going to have a nice first game. Not amazing. He's not going to throw 5 touchdowns, 400 yards, but he's going to have a good game. Week 2, Panthers at Bucks. 26 for 34, 289, 2 touchdowns. Not an insane game, but a solid game from Brady. He starts out the season really well. Week 3, he goes down a little bit in the yardage category, 19 for 28, 266, and 3 touchdowns. Week 4, it's 21 for 26, 319 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Chargers. And then he has pretty much his worst game of the season against the Buccaneers, in which he goes against the Bears, in which he goes 17 for 29, 258 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. I believe the Bears defense is going to be a great challenge to Brady. Then he's going to face the Packers against Aaron Rodgers. I believe this is going to be an offensive bout in which Brady throws 25 for 36, 358 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Great game from Brady. Week 7, they play the Raiders. I believe it's kind of going to be a cakewalk for the Bucks. It's going to have a great run day. 23 for 32, 276 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Week 8, the Bucks at the Giants. Brady's going to have his best game of the season. A cakewalk offensively, 33 for 44, 380 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Week 9, the Saints at the Bucks. I believe the Bucks are going to lose this game, the second matchup of the season, but Brady's still going to go 19 for 26, 280, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Not a brilliant game, but a solid game from Brady. He won't be the reason they lose. Week 10, Bucks at the Panthers. Brady's going to go 15 for 25, 248 yards, 1 touchdown. Not a stellar game, not a terrible game either, but they might lose this one. Week 11, Rams at the Bucks. Brady's going to have a nice game playing at home against the Rams. 26 for 31, 312 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Week 12, the Chiefs go to Tampa to play the Bucks. It's going to be a shootout, offensive focused game, 25 for 34, 347 yards, 3 touchdowns, possibly an interception in there, but I left one out just for benefit of the doubt. Week 13, Vikings at the Bucks, 22 for 28, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Week 14, Bucks at the Falcons, 16 for 25, 298, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Bucks at Lions, 18 for 23, 333 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then he ends off the season only playing 2 quarters, 12 for 14, 198 yards, and 1 touchdown. So in total, Brady ends with arguably one of the best, if not the best, season of his career with around 4,700 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, possibly 10, and a 72.7% completion rating. Now, granted, this is very generous, but I am giving the Buccaneers the benefit of the doubt when nobody else will. The total fantasy quarterback ranking, 4. So thank you so much for watching this video. That is why you should draft Tom Brady as your fantasy quarterback this season. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.